Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for honeybee stamps. Today we are going to be doing some coloring with all kinds of mediums. We're going to be using some older stamp sets here. I'm using the Friendship Frame, the Daisy Layers Bouquet, and the Beautiful Blooms. But basically, any stamp set that has a stencil will work, and for our sentiments, we are using this one's for the girls, because even though I've made so many Mother's Day cards, I have not yet made my own mother's or my mother-in-law's cards. So that's what these will be used for. So basically, no line coloring, and I'm using the no line coloring ink from Honeybee, can be very overwhelming. Even though the look of it is so beautiful, sometimes it can just be really overwhelming to get that look. So here is a little trick hack you can use, and it doesn't matter which medium you prefer. Today we're going to be doing it with watercolor, with alcohol markers, and with colored pencils. But we're going to go ahead and stamp down our stamp in our no line coloring ink on watercolor paper. That's just what I chose to use because I wasn't sure which one I was going to watercolor, honestly. And I ended up switching which one I watercolored, so I guess it's a good thing that I did all three of them on watercolor paper. But I am stamping them down. You don't have to worry about getting a perfect impression. We're really just going to be using that no line coloring ink to create our guide for where to put our color and where we're going to do our shading. So I stamped all three of them to create my three cards. One of them will be for my children. one of them will be for my mother-in-law. One of them will be for my mom. Anybody else making their Mother's Day cards like weekend of? Just me? Maybe just me. So the trick to this is really very simple, is priming with your stencils. So here are the three pieces, and they are slightly larger than an A2 size card, but that was so I would have something for to stick my tape to. And some of these stencils are before Honeybee really started creating layering stencils, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be a layering stencil. So like this one is very open, like that mum. We're going to get the entirety of that mum in this first go round. I chose to ink blend with Distress inks, but that is because, again, I didn't know which one I was going to be watercoloring. You can ink blend with whatever ink you would like. I would just caution you that if you're going to do watercolor with them, you probably want to use a ink that is going to be, that reacts with water, so it's water soluble. If you are going to be coloring with alcohol markers, then you want to use an ink that is not going to react with your alcohol markers. So this is, for this first card, this is the one I originally thought I was going to watercolor, and that's why I am doing two different colors, so that way I would have two colors reacting with each other. But that's not the one that I ended up watercoloring, so no big deal. You'll see that it ends up working out just fine. So with each of these, I'm just going to go through and I have the two colors that I'm using. For the other ones, for the other two cards, I am not going to use two colors. I'm only going to use one base layer color. And you can see, even as we're putting the inks on here and doing our ink blending, that no line ink is still visible. We can still see those lines very clearly. So this will be the only card that I think I show you the stenciling in its entirety, because after, so many stencils, you get the point. You get what we're doing, which is basically just putting ink down. I really like the way that Distress inks blend. I know not everybody does. You can definitely try this with oxides, but understand that oxides have different properties. They are a mix. They're a hybrid, if you will, of like pigment and dye inks. And so because they do have those pigment properties, they dry back a lot chalkier. And that chalky kind of film that sits on top may make it more difficult for you to be able to see your lines. So maybe, I mean, that would be when you'd have to try, and maybe with an image you're really, really comfortable coloring, maybe that would work. The other reason why this type of, obviously we've sped this up now, right? I don't ink blend this fast. I also don't line up my stencils that fast. But the other thing that is really nice is, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this, like writer's block or painter's block, like when you have just a white blank piece of paper and you can't seem to get yourself started. Back to the card real quick. So here, there's like some little berries, and this, if I remember correctly, when beautiful bouquets or beautiful blooms, I'm sorry, first came out, it was like in the fall, and so I think that these are meant to be like little cattails, but I actually turned them into berries, to be more of like a spring summer feel. Don't worry about the fact that the stems are also blue. It's not gonna matter. Later on, we'll be able to fix that when we're doing the technique on top of it. So anyway, like that writer's block or that painter's block that you can get when it's just like a stark white piece of paper, it can create this fear to start. Like you're just kind of overwhelmed and you don't know where to start. Using a stencil first and getting everything down kind of breaks that spell because there's already color on the paper, so you're just adding color to it. And I know for me, like when I was coloring them, I found it much easier to color them because I already had that paper or that color down on the paper, and so I wasn't worried about messing up. Like I already knew what colors were going to go where, kind of thing. The other thing that is super nice about using the stencils first, if you have any questions about what is in your bouquet or your floral frame or whatever, using the stencils first is going to show you everything. Like with the friendship frame, it's labeled, like small flowers, leaves, like all those things are labeled. So there's no surprises about what you're going to be coloring. There's no guesswork like there is sometimes with stamps that are maybe a little bit more involved. So this is the ink blending for that one in its entirety. We're going to move on to the daisies. Now, I am going to be honest with you. The daisies kind of got away from me. I think I remember telling you guys this. I actually lost my carved pumpkin. And so I just bought this one from Honeybee. They just sent it to me. And it's because it's so juicy, because it's new, that ink went down a little bit darker than I intended it to. For your watercolors, you do want to be a little bit light-handed with the ink that you're putting down, especially if you're going to go in and add more pigment to it. And also pay attention to your colors, because what ends up happening with this one is it ends up kind of being all the same kind of green around the edges, and it ends up being all kind of the same pink, purple, blue flowers in the center. So when we get to the watercoloring, I'll point out maybe what I would have done differently. But anywho, this works really great for really any medium. And I have another idea for another medium, but I don't want to commit to it yet. I need to try it first before I share it with you guys. For this one, instead of like what I did the last time with the daisies where I just picked random colors, this time I kind of went in rainbow order and I just kept them the same in every single section. So I started with the purple in the left-hand corner, and then I went purple, blue, teal, green, yellow, orange, pink, and every single stencil I did the same color right over top of it, so that it gives me kind of like a rainbow floral frame. I did this with this card another time, and if I think about it, I will try to remember to link it. But I did the same kind of thing with the ink blending on top of it, and then we colored the outside black, and it was like this real dramatic card. It's probably one of my favorite cards that I ever made. But anywho, just going to show you a couple of stencils so that you can see what I'm talking about. So like every time it's pink in the bottom left, every time it's purple in the top left. So we're just going over it again and again with those same colors. We are going to get different intensities and different blends based on what is open and what's next to each other. So maybe if there's more blue open on one stencil, my teal flowers or my purple flowers might have more blue in them. So you get the idea. The purple one, I actually picked up the wrong brush on accident. I picked up a dark blue brush instead of a dark purple brush. So I do have some that are kind of in there that are a little bit more blue violet, and that was pretty fun too. So that might be something to kind of play around with in the future. But anyway, again, we're sped up. This is all of the cards. This is just stenciled, and they're pretty, but they're not like wow. So let's talk about how we can make them a little bit more interesting without a whole lot of, well, I shouldn't say a whole lot of effort. There is some effort involved, but not nearly as much as if we were starting from scratch. So here I am going to go in, I just have a wet brush, and remember, you have to follow the same rules that you would follow for no line, because there isn't embossing, there isn't anything keeping these separate, even though we've put down the ink. So you cannot work next to two areas that are wet. You have to separate them or your petals will become a blob. But I'm just going to go in first with just some clean water, and you can already see how it starts to move the pigment because I am using distress inks and they're reactive with water. So it's really kind of, you know, pushing that purple kind of out to the edges. It's giving it a more painterly look already. So you can choose whether or not you just want to add water to each of the petals or if you want to add some more pigment. I just smushed my distress inks down on my glass mat to use as a palette, and then that way I can go in and add some more intensity or some color variation as I choose, which I did. I added quite a bit. Now, because I was kind of in the zone, I just added like pink, purple, and blue to the pink, purple, and blue flowers. I wish if I had it to do all over again, I wish that I would have added some orange to the pink petals so it didn't feel so kind of disjointed, but it does end up feeling a little bit disjointed. Now I'll show you how my plan of attack for that later on, but it ends up feeling very heavy with cool colors in the center, and then on the outskirts we have that yellow and that orange. Now, while those are drying, I'm going to move on to my orange flowers, but I want you to see here, because I put down the color so intense with that carved pumpkin, you almost can't even tell that I've wet the petals. And I certainly can't add any sort of pigment as far as like a yellow or anything like that, which was my original game plan. So I tried to shade it with a little bit of teal because that's oranges, like a yellow oranges complement. And that does work, like adding in a little bit of teal and then going back over it with the orange. But ultimately, I ended up shading those particular petals with the pink. And so I think if I would have shaded the pink petals with the orange, not only would it have made the whole thing look a little bit more cohesive, it would have, it just would have looked nicer. It just would have looked nicer, I think. But anywho, so I am going to speed this up here in a little bit because, again, it's just the same thing over and over again. And you guys have probably seen me watercolor bunches and bunches, and we have a lot to kind of fit into this video so that we could, you know, show all the different ways that you can use it. So again, like I said before, just going through, picking out petals that are not next to wet ones, adding in those different colors in different intensities, and the pink, purple, blue flowers, I really did love. This kind of yellow one over on the edge, I let a little bit of the green from the leaves blend into, and I really liked that as well. I just like them when they look more watercolory, like when the color bleeds a little bit into one another, and it doesn't look so like, I don't know, stiff. You know, it looks like it has more movement when those colors kind of blend in together. So yeah, there's a couple of things I would have done differently. Ultimately, at the end, like, I do think that it is a pretty card, but it was a good kind of practice learning lesson for me on how I would have done things just a little bit differently, and how I can share with you what I would have changed, so that way if you're going in to you know, give this a go for the first time, maybe those are things that you can, you know, pay attention to as well. For the leaves, it was definitely heavier on the yellow-green side. I probably should have added in more of the peacock feathers to get more color variation, or maybe some yellow, maybe some of that mustard seed would have been nice in there. But I don't think I just added enough. So they ended up all kind of being the same color, which is okay. I mean, at least they match, right? Right? That's a win. So here is the finished piece. It obviously does look watercolored, and that is the whole point of the little trick. So now this one is the one I ended up doing with the alcohol markers. And again, you want to look for those lines, and we're going to do what I call kind of mapping. We're going to map in our shadows, and this is to assure us that we don't lose those lines, because we need them so that everything doesn't look mushy. Like, we need those shadows to be in place. And it looks a little crazy right now, like when you're going in and following along those lines, it looks like it doesn't make any sense. But once you get to your midtones, it really starts to kind of come together so that you can see that there's it's a double flower. Like, there's a double layer of florals here. And you can start to see how those kind of top edges kind of pop out from the layer that's closest to the center. But just go through, take your time, follow the lines that are there. And again, in order to have dimension, you have to have contrast. So don't be afraid of those darker colors, especially since we already have the color down and we know, where those lines are. You're really just going to follow along with those lines. And then, the same thing that I always tell you is true. Any point where one object is laying on top of the other, or where one object meets another, like, you're going to have a little bit of darker shading there. It doesn't necessarily have to be your darkest shading, but there should be a differentiation in color. So now we're on to the second midtone, and you can see that it's kind of really starting to come together, to see those two layers of flowers, that double layer. And the lightest color will be what we just kind of hit those edges in with. And I don't even come out from like the center. Like, I don't go over the whole thing. I come in from the edge, especially with my pinks, because your pinks, that lighter color totally eats up that darker color. It brightens it so much. The orange flower is a chrysanthemum, and I know that it was released in the fall because chrysanthemums, right? That's the flower for November, which is my daughter's birthday. But anyway, they're probably all mums. Dude, like, looking at this now, they're probably all mums. They're just different kinds of mums. That makes so much more sense. Okay, sorry, totally sidetracked. But anyway, this type of chrysanthemum is a little bit more challenging to color. My advice on this one would be just make sure when you're paying attention to the lines, you're paying attention to the way the line is drawn, like the shape of it, because it's a side view and some of those petals are kind of arced out and coming down. You want to make sure that your lines are following the same lines there. And then in order for that middle part not to get super blobby, you do kind of have to go in and do these. They're almost like little mini V's, like V for Victor, just to keep them kind of separated. The yellow one, the center and the smaller yellow one are the same color, and this is my normal go-to kind of yellow color combination. It's a bit more golden, but really I'm doing the same thing. I'm just looking at the lines that are already there, and then I'm basing my shadows off of that. This one can be a little bit scary, especially since the darkest color is a brown. It's an E. But in order to create that dimension, you do have to have maybe a brown, a darker golden yellow, maybe an orange would work as well. But you got to have something that's a little bit darker. Yellows are hard to get depth with because they're all so bright. And right now it looks crazy, but hang tight because once we add the green in, it'll be okay. Now remember when I told you when we were doing the stenciling that it was going to look a little bit wild because the blue the blue berries had blue stems. Same thing with the purple, like they're the same color. We're gonna fix that here in just 1 minute. For the leaves, this is the same thing. Like I'm going in with my darkest color and I'm just mapping those lines. So those lines are what is giving our leaf that more realistic kind of look. Here's where we're going to fix the stems. You just want to make sure that and you could do this with alcohol markers like we're doing here, or you could do this with colored pencils because colored pencils are opaque. But I went in with the browns and just went right over that blue, and nobody who doesn't see this video will ever be any the wiser. For these kind of smoother shaped leaves, I just added a line in the middle. And honestly, even before I added any shading, just adding that line, that little bit of detail really starts to kind of bring them to life. So if you are like, Kelly, this is way above my pay grade, I get it. We all start somewhere. Just try adding those lines. Just add shading, like maybe a mid-tone shading to the lines that are already there and see if you're happy with how that looks. And that might give you the courage to kind of take the next step. I did these little bellflowers in the same blue that I did the berries, really just to continue the, that kind of triangle, that visual triangle that we talk about sometimes in design. And then for these little guys, I did them purple, and they're so tiny, it only required 2 colors. And then that will finish this one. This one, no big shock, because I prefer alcohol markers, is my favorite one. I love the way that one came out. So now let's get into pencils. I know, can you guys even believe that I did pencils? This actually went by really fast. Normally I shy away from pencils because they take so long. And it takes so long for me to get a result I'm happy with. But because I already have the base color down, I felt like I could go in and just add the shadows of the colors. And really, I didn't even try to like super blend them. I just embraced the texture of the watercolor paper, which really makes the whole frame a little bit more interesting because it isn't like smooth color application. Of course, you could do this on regular cardstock. This same trick will work on regular cardstock with the exception of the watercoloring one. But for the alcohol markers or the colored pencils, that will absolutely work. The other nice thing about doing it with colored pencils, as I previously stated, they are opaque. So when you go in, like for this flower here, this teal flower, or any of those little blue ones, like we have ink blended over that, but you can go in with a yellow pencil, and I will here in just a second, and fill in those centers. This would also be a really great way to kind of incorporate those different colors. So, you could do your base color in whatever you would want, even if it was I don't know, like let's say a yellow plays pretty nicely with everything except purple and blue. Well, it plays nice with blue, but it would make green. You get what I'm saying. Like if you went in with maybe a light pink, and then just went over top of it with your colored pencils, and it would almost be like an underpainting. I think that might be fun to kind of play around with your different base colors. But I was just looking to make a pretty card for one of my moms. And so I just kept it nice and simple with just shading those with the same colors that I ink blended with. And ultimately I wasn't disappointed with it. I'm super happy with the way my little rainbow frame came out. And it really did not take me that long. Now here, I'm going to go ahead and speed it up a little bit because, we do have to move on. But really, it was pretty quick for colored pencils, and that's coming from somebody who doesn't even super enjoy using them. So if that's your preferred medium, then this should work great for you. And like I said, I do have another idea. I probably won't use this stamp. I'll probably use a different stamp. But I do have another idea for maybe another way that we could try to do this. And I'm excited to try that. So if you never see that video, it means it didn't work. It means it didn't work. So as far as like life and the homestead and stuff, we're just getting ready for Mother's Day. We are hosting a brunch for both of our mothers, which will be nice, you know, to have everybody here and be able to see everyone kind of under one roof. It does mean that we have to, you know, cook and do the cleaning ourselves. But if you remember back in what was it? Was it for Christmas? Yeah, he got his Blackstone for Christmas. I was trying, his birthday's so close to Christmas that sometimes I forget which is which, but he did get it for Christmas. My wonderful husband has a Blackstone, so he is going to be doing the vast majority of the cooking for breakfast tomorrow, or brunch. It's really brunch tomorrow, except for the biscuits and gravy. I will be making the biscuits and gravy and the chocolate gravy. If you are from the South, you know what that is, and it's delicious. And my family would not be celebrating a holiday in the area of breakfast or brunch if we did not have it. Like, people would say something like, where is it at? In fact, my son, now that he is a little bit older, asked me, how come when you make biscuits and gravy, you never make chocolate gravy? And I was like, dude, I don't have the recipe. So now I had to get it from my mom because he was so adamant that we have it. And I honestly don't blame him, because how do you feel about salty and sweet? Because to me, there is nothing more delicious than a bacon or a sausage patty, a crispy sausage patty, dipped in the chocolate gravy. I will be interested to see how you guys feel about that. Or, you know, you may not even know what chocolate gravy is. I've talked about it on my channel before, I know. But anywho. So we're finishing up the coloring for this one now, just getting in those little yellow centers, and then we're going to move on to die cutting them. Now I will be die cutting each of these with their coordinating die. I knew that I'm a clean and simple card maker at heart. I love a bold bright color and a white background. That's just really clean to me. So I'm going to be die cutting these out, which is why I didn't really have to worry about the ink blending. When I put the die down for the frame, I did forget the inside, so I wanted to go back and show you guys that I did put that in case you don't own that one and you're like, hey, how'd you cut out the middle? There's a die for that. So you can choose to cut it out as one piece or cut out the middle. For the sentiments, I am using both of the sentiment, like the larger sentiments from this one's for the girls. And instead of stamping them in black, I'm stamping them in charcoal, just so that they would be a little bit softer, since we do have that no line look. And then I stamped 2 of the Happy Mother's Days and 1 with the With Love on Mother's Day, and I will cut them out again with their coordinating dies. If you have never used this set, the Honeybee has, this one's for the girls and this one's for the guys. This one's for the boys. I can't remember what it's called. They are the most... Like, they have the most options. They have Nana, they have Grandma, they have Auntie, they have Abuela, they have TT. They have all, I think they have TT. But anyway, they have all kinds of stuff in there. Niece, daughter-in-law, Grammy, like everything that it's Tia. That was my bad. But they have all of the options for whatever you would need for a special mother type figure, sister, whatever in your life. So each of these, I chose to pop them up with foam. That is kind of an excruciating process. So for the most part, I skipped leaving it in. This one, I'm only showing it to you because it's my bridge. Like, I have to put it right in the middle because it bridges the gap between the frame and sits in the center. So I just wanted to show you how I did that, and then went ahead and adhered that. And then this one, the Beautiful Blooms, is also adhered with the foam. I did it, it's because it's almost like a perfect square, you know? So I did it more at the top and then put my sentiment underneath it. You may have noticed on my watercolor one, I put the sentiment directly in the center of the daisies. And this was how I kind of broke up that little bit of color pattern that I had going on where it was super concentrated in the center. This is definitely, I mean, all of it's optional, but this is definitely optional. And there's going to be some people who are going to be like, you ruined your beautiful card because you put splatter on it. And that's fine. I don't think so. So I wanted to add just a little bit of shine and a little bit more interest in the background. And so I'm using Gold Perfect Pearls. I am covering my sentiments with the stamps to keep them clean. And I can't remember where I saw that at, on somebody's reel or something, but it's brilliant. Do that if you want to save your sentiment. And then I also did a little spattering of the Copic white opaque ink on them as well. And then since I only have, like, obviously I use the same stamp for one of them, I just moved it on over to the other one. I used the gem stickers, I think it's Let's Party. And so for this one, I used the kind of like bluish purple to, again, kind of complete my color scheme. And then I used opal and then pink. But anyway, that's it. That's all 3 cards. So I hope that this little trick is very helpful to you to give you the push that you need to start no line coloring. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.